Hey everybody, my name's Yvette. I'm coming to you from Yvette Marie's Fine Arts and Crafts, and today I'm going to show you how to make this beautiful lacy ruffle scarf, and we're going to be using the Red Heart Sassy Lace. This is, when you first receive it, it's going to come in a little ball, so to speak, that's shaped kind of like this here. Now this is the fabric one, but the lace comes in a similar fashion, and it looks kind of like this, packaged up in a little ball. You can use one or more packages or balls for your scarf. Now this particular one here, I used almost a complete ball. I just took a couple yards off just for today's purpose of the demonstration, and just by removing those couple yards, it left me with a 38-inch scarf for this ruffle scarf. And I'm going to be using a size 10 wooden needle. My first preference would be wooden or bamboo for this project, only because it tends to be a little bit slippery with the holes already created in your lace. Sometimes it's a little bit slippery, and if you're using a metal needle, they tend to easily slide off. So I do prefer wooden or bamboo. My second choice would be a plastic needle, and then my last choice would be the metal needles. So I'm going to show you how to use this lace to make the ruffle scarf, and I do recommend that it's going to sound silly, but I recommend that you have no rough nails and little pieces of like dry skin and things like that, because this yarn or lace tends to get stuck. If you have a lot of like little hangnails and things like that, it really tends to get stuck very easily on dry hands and things like that. I've definitely found that out. Also, you're going to need a pair of scissors, and you're also going to need a needle with corresponding thread just to place a couple stitches at the end after we cast off. You're going to use it just to put a couple stitches at the end to tuck down that last little flap, and I'll show you how to do that in the end as well. Depending on how long you want your scarf, you'll want to use one or more skeins, maybe even like one and a partial skein. And I'll show you how to combine the two skeins together in just a few minutes as well. This is going to be a pretty quick, short video once we get started here in just a moment. I'm only going to work a few rows for you. I'll show you how to cast on, I will show you how to work a few rows, and then I'll show you how to cast off and end your scarf and finish it. So for intermediate and seasoned knitters, this will be a pretty quick, easy video. I'm sure you'll be able to follow along and just take off and work on yourself. For beginners, you might want to just rewind the video a little bit and just rewatch a couple of the rows if you need to go back to see how to do it, but I think you'll probably pick up on it pretty quickly. So the way I start off with my scarf is I will take the first two stitches or holes and I'll fold them over, matching them up with a set underneath. And I'm going to cast on 6 stitches by taking my needle and placing it from behind and going into that first hole, and then the second hole, and then 4 more of the individual single layer here to create 6 stitches cast on my needle. Now, I used 6 stitches for this one here. You'll see how nice and fluffy it is next compared to my hand. It's a nice fluffy scarf. You can use anywhere from, I'd say, 4 stitches up to maybe 8 or 10, but if you do 8 or 10, keep in mind it's going to be almost double this width, and you'll need a good couple skeins or balls of the lace to do so. Another quick thing I want to mention is, after creating your scarf, you may want to put it in one of those mesh washing bags and very, very gently, on a very gentle cycle, wash it and then let it hang dry, maybe to get some of the itching out, because I tend to be a little sensitive myself to wearing itchy things, and I did find this scarf was really itchy. Even though it's one of my absolute favorite scarves to make, it's so beautiful, usually I have to wear it over something that has a collar, which I don't like collars either. So, I mean, this is just, if you're not real sensitive to itching with kind of scratchy fabrics and things like that, this will be great. But I just wanted to mention that for people who might be a little bit sensitive to things that aren't, that are a little bit itchy and scratchy. Okay, so let's get back to our project here. So I've cast on 6 stitches, and the first 2 are double layered with that little area that I folded over. Now you're not going to need to sew this because it's not going to show once we've completed the scarf. This kind of gets hidden in here, this little raw edge here, and it really doesn't have a problem with fraying or anything like that, I've noticed either, so there's no need to stitch it down or you know, do anything. If you're more comfortable and you feel safer, you could probably just put a little bit of fray check, but otherwise I wouldn't go too much into worrying about that. So I am right-handed, so I hope lefties can catch on to this pretty quickly and easily as well through my video. So you're just basically going to use these holes, the holes that have been created, and we're going to go into them, and we're going to basically work this basic knit stitch. So we're going to take our needle and we're going to place it into the hole from the first hole from front to back, and we're going to be using every hole. Now some of the ruffle yarns, you would skip some of these holes and use every other hole, like the Sachet brand and the other ruffle scarf, one of the first ruffle yarns that came out. But with this one, we're going to actually use every single hole. So we're just going to place our needle from front to back, and then we're going to take that first hole and we're going to just place it from behind around the back needle. Then we're just going to catch that, and then we're going to bring it through so that it's still caught on the needle, and we're going to lift off the stitch from the other needle. So we'll do that again, and I'll go just a little bit slow for newbies here. You're just going to go in from the front to the back, take that next hole, place it over the back needle from the back towards the front, towards the center, so that it catches in the center, catching on your needle, keeping it on your needle, pulling it through there, and then lifting off the back one. And we're just going to keep going in that same fashion for the rest of the 4 stitches. So just from front to back into that hole, taking the next hole, placing it over the back needle from the back to the front, catching it on there, bringing it through, lifting off. Next one, same thing, front to back, taking your hole and placing it over, your loop and placing it over, and then pulling off. These last 2 stitches, just make sure that you catch both layers of your lace. So I've got 2 layers of lace I want to make sure I catch in here. My next hole, my next loop, over the back one, pull it through, and then pull that double layer off. Same thing with the last one, make sure you get both holes nice and neat. Next hole, take your next loop and put it over the back needle again, pulling it through, catching it on your front needle, and then pulling off. And that is your first row of knitting. You'll see you can kind of pull it a little bit loosely at first. That won't continue to be that way. Once you start working a few layers, you'll see how it kind of starts forming these ruffles, and it's a little stretchy but not too bad. It stays in place and stays in form, so it doesn't look like this where you can just kind of pull the whole thing out and stretch it out. So then we're just going to flip this around again, and we're going to do the same thing. The next row is going to be the exact same thing. You're just going to take your first loop that's on your needle and place your needle in it from front to back. Take your next hole, place it over that back needle from the back to the front, catching it on the needle, pull it through, and remove from that, from the other stitch. Okay, so same thing, front to back, catching that loop on the back needle, pulling it through, and lifting off. We're just going to keep going that same way. This is what we're going to do for every single row. So we're going to catch again inside this loop here, front to back, taking that next one, placing it over the back needle, catching it, pulling it through, and then lifting off. Okay, so we're just going to keep working every single row in the same fashion. Now I'm going to just get to the end here, and I'll work a few more stitches. Then I'm going to show you basically how to combine another another ball of lace, so to speak, to this if you want to make this scarf longer, and if one skein is not enough for you or one ball is not enough in it, you want it to be a lot longer. Okay, so I've got a little bit left on this one piece I saved just for this demonstration, so I'll work a few more stitches and I'll show you once we get to the end of that what to do if you want to add more. So again, for newbies, I'll just go through this again. We're taking that back loop, placing it from back to front, catching it, pulling it through, lifting off, needle front to back through that hole, catching the next one, lifting off, front to back, as you can see, my fingers are getting a little stuck on here. I've got dry hands even though I put lotion on before the video. Make sure you're only catching that little one strand, because sometimes you've got this other strand, these from down here. So make sure you're catching the right strand when you're working this. You want to go right into that big hole there. And I hope this black lace is okay for this video against the white background. It should be okay. Back over, next one, and we're at the end. Okay, so now we've got 2 rows, and you'll see that this is where we did our first row here. We have that little area here. You really don't even see that first area that you stitched. It doesn't show or anything, so it's completely hidden underneath there. Once you have your layers and you wear it, you won't even notice that's where you began, and that you have that area that's folded over underneath there. Doesn't even show. Okay, so if you want to add a piece of lace and keep working it, if you want to make your scarf longer than one, you can take your lace and you can just overlap it like this here by a couple. Usually 2's enough, I find, like this here. So what I do is, as I'm working this, and if you need to, you can pin this over here. Let me try that for you. And I try to do this in the middle of a row so that it's hidden somewhere in here and not towards the edge. So I've got 6 on the needle, so if I go in 2 or 3, I'm fine. It'll be right perfectly smack dab in the middle. So you're just going to line up 2 of your holes. You can place a needle right here for now, just after that first hole, because you really only need to get that first hole lined up to be able to work it. So I've got my needle in there, got my 2 pieces overlapping, and I prefer to have the piece I'm adding, which is to the right, because I'm right-handed. I like to have that one facing me because that'll get hidden in the layers a little bit easier. And I'm just going to keep working right on through it. So I'm just going to go ahead, work my next stitch, same way as we did before. And just be, excuse me, be a little careful as you approach that area that's overlapped, that you have your old and new lace together. Making sure, and here we are now, we've got them lined up, so we're going to place both layers. Make sure you got both layers over that back needle together so it catches nicely. Okay, and the next one, I'm going to take out the needle at this point, And those next two will be right there, lined up right here for me. So I'm going to use that one and place it over the back, making sure I catch both layers again, working the stitches the same way. And let's just work to the end. That just happened to work perfectly right in the middle. Okay, so we have our third row done. And if you flip it over, you notice that you really don't even see it unless you look for it. Then you see this little layer here coming up. But as we work this next row, it'll be completely hidden, and I'll just work that row really quickly so that you can see that once you get this row worked, it is completely hidden underneath this next layer of ruffles. You won't even see where we combined the two pieces of yarn. Now these two stitches that we had, the double layers, are going to be a little thicker, but your needles will still work through them perfectly fine with this size 10 needle. There's no problem with that whatsoever. I probably would not go to a size 11 needle with this particular yarn. I find a size 10 is plenty big, and it's whether you use a size 8, 9, or 10, it's going to be fine because you're not creating anything as far as the size of your stitches or holes or anything, obviously, because they're already created. Completely different than from if you were working with a skein of yarn. Okay, so now you'll see, wrong side, you'll see that, we have one more layer to go. This is on the other side now, whoops. Okay, so if we did one more row, you would see that these would be completely covered up, but as you can see here, you really can't even tell unless you're really looking closely again that you have an overlap there. Okay, so I'm going to skip ahead and I'm going to show you how to finish your scarf, and I've got a piece here that I've got just waiting with just enough holes on it. Now the way I like to do this, I've got 6 stitches, and I like to work with the 6 stitches for my particular scarf. Again, I just like the way it comes out nice and fluffy. So when I get to the end of my scarf and I'm ready to finish and cast off, what I do is, since I have 6 stitches, I will have my regular 6 holes plus an additional 3 at the end, and that is so that I can fold over 3 like this here. And then that will give me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches to cast off or bind off with. So what I'll do is, I'm just going to place a little needle here just to hold that one, a pin, excuse me, to hold that one there so that I can see that 3rd stitch. And I'm going to work the last row to cast off, and it's similar to casting off with yarn in the way you actually do the cast off. The only difference is we're going to place a couple stitches at the end to hold the lace down. So we're going to just knit 2 stitches, and then what you're going to do is you're going to take, like you do with the regular knitting and casting off, is you're going to take this farthest one over, loop farthest away from the end. You're going to pull it over this one and over the ends, and keeping this one on the needle. Make sure you keep this one on the needle and don't drop it. So you're carefully going to pull it up and over, leaving the one that was closest to the end on your needle. Now I'm going to give you a little hint that I like to use when I do my cast off, especially for these yarns. I'm going to actually switch over carefully to a crochet hook. This is my favorite way to do this. It just makes it a little bit easier. I'm going to use my crochet hook as another knitting needle instead of this knitting needle on this side. I'm going to use a crochet hook. I'm going to pretend it's a knitting needle. I'm going to do the same exact method. I'm going to do my stitches the same way. The only difference is I've got a little hook at the end here. I'm going to go over the back of the needle here as if a hook as if it were a needle, and it's really cool because it catches this really easy for you. Now this is the easy part. All you do is you hold this on the hook and you just pull it through like that. So much easier than worrying if you're going to lose that stitch when you're pulling the other one over it, okay? So again, we're going to use this as a knitting needle, same thing. Now we're getting to our area where we have our double layer. So this first one, I've got the pin in. I'll leave it for just a moment. I'm just going to place both layers of yarn over. I'll pull this out now just because I know I can at this point. And I'm going to catch that on there, pull it through as if it were my knitting needle, and then lift off. Okay, so now I've just got 2 left at the end here, and I've got 2 left to work. So I'm just going to work it again, lining up these holes, making sure I get my 2 layers over the back one, pulling that through, lifting off, pretending it's a knitting needle, and my last one is the same way. Oops, excuse me. Forgot. Oops, hold on. I forgot to lift off at the last one. So I neglected to do this one step here, so I'm going to take this last one and bring it through again before I go on to that next one. So now, again, I've got 2 left. Sorry about that. So now again, I'm going to go into my second to last. I've got 2 left. I'm going to use this as a knitting needle, go in from, come on, front to back, take my double layer, bring it over, catch it, and lift off. Now here we got to remember this again, is to pull this one over that one. So we're just going to pull this right through like that. Okay, so now I've got 1 hole left on this double layer here. So I'm going to do the same thing, work my last stitch, catching those 2 layers together over, bringing it through, lifting it out the needle. So now we have an empty needle. It's all on our crochet hook now. So now all I have to do is pull that one through as my last one. Now, while this is on my crochet hook, I'm going to pull a little harder, and I can even use my finger at this point to pull through this little bit of lace here. I want to pull that through this last stitch so that it comes through and it looks like this. Now at this point, all I have to do is take this area here and fold it down behind there, and I'm just going to take it, this little tail I have, I'm going to fold it down behind here, and I'm just going to put a couple stitches with needle and thread, tack it down, and once you do that, it'll be the end like this here, and you won't notice it like that. That's what your end will look like. Okay, so it's totally hidden underneath there in the layers, the beginning and the end. So this is the same fashion that you're going to use to work the Red Heart Boutique Sassy fabric, and I will create a separate video for that just so you can see it, just so that I can label it correctly, and if people want to work this particular one, they can. It's beautiful. It's super soft. I love the way it frills and just is so soft to wear. And this one's great. It's not itchy like the lacy one. So if you have any questions on the Lace Ruffle Scarf, please leave them below and I'll be happy to answer you. I think that's it for now. Have a great day and thanks so much for watching.